Mental health. What is it? Mental health is our ability to respond to the challenges that life throws at us. We can have all sorts of mental struggles about money, work, relationships, family, health, or just life in general. Good mental health is our ability to function, to bounce back from these struggles, and to be able to move forward. Being able to deal with the worries of everyday life helps us build resilience, which is another way of saying good mental health. Resilience can help us when our problems seem overwhelming. Without it, our mental health could spiral out of control, changing the way we feel, think, and behave. It could mean being worried or afraid all of the time, feeling numb or like nothing matters, or losing touch with what is real. When this happens, it can take some time to get back on track. At these times, it's important to reach out for help, whether it's through friends, family, or mental health professionals. Finding the right support can help us get back to feeling ourselves. Sometimes, though, professional advice is needed. But where do you find that? Head to Health can be a guide to help you find the right information, support, and
Sorry, my mic was muted. But as I was saying, this is my very first episode of Mental Health Mondays. This is something that I've been thinking about doing for a while. I wanted to hit subjects of mental health a lot more and do it weekly as well, because the vast subjects of mental health, I mean, you can go on forever about different subjects every week. So I wanted to make a podcast where we talked about it weekly, where we discussed mental health, I talked about different subjects this week. And I guess I can put that up on the screen so everybody knows what this actually is. This is a Mental Health Monday presented by the Rumination Project. And this is something we're going to have every single Monday, 7:30. And it's usually going to run about an hour. And I need to share out some more. If you can, please share to a group. Would like to get a bigger audience. I know that today I'm probably not going to have a big audience because this is my first time ever doing this. But please share me out to your page. Like me, we're going to talk a lot of different mental health. As you can see on the screen, we are going to talk mostly about different mental health related subjects that help us understand and heal your complex mind. Because when I start talking about mental health and some of the things that I know just from the last 3 years of going through a journey of using organic and natural stuff to treat mental illness, it blows my mind what people don't know. So I feel like I need to share more of my knowledge, share more of other people's knowledge, because I certainly do not know everything. So a lot of the stuff that I will share will be from YouTube. I love finding people who know what they're talking about and explaining it very well with different subjects. So we'll do a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of education on different subjects. But I got one person watching. Thanks for joining me. I didn't expect a big audience, especially since I just threw this out there. And it is, I decided to do it on Mondays because Mondays seem to be one of the hardest days for a human being, I guess. You just had a good weekend and now Monday comes and you got to go back to work, and it can be a mental struggle. I struggle myself on Mondays, and sometimes I allow myself to sleep in a little bit just because it is Monday, and your body has to get used and adjust to doing something different than it was over the weekend. You got one person watching, but there's not many people on at 7:30 in the morning apparently. But we will work on the time as well as maybe change the day. I do like the Monday because of the fact of what I just told you. But really, I'd love to just educate people more on mental health. So we want to, get the audience out there. But today we were actually going to talk about, what is mental health. I do have the schedule here I can add. This is episode 1, and it's going to be basically why we started the weekly podcast and why mental health is important. And we all know that mental health is really important. We know even more nowadays that it is important with all the stuff that we see in the news. We see mass shootings, we see gun violence. We see a lot of people who are just mentally unstable and committing acts of violence when they come down to it. And I mean, you can look at every single situation, and that almost 95% of them have a mental illness. They're mentally unstable. And I think as a society, we misunderstand mental illness sometimes. A lot of us are very ignorant. And I think that we need to educate the public more on what mental illness, how to have a sound mental illness. How to have a sound mind, and how to overcome mental illness if you actually, have a mental illness. And I need to get some music going in here. It's kind of quiet. But if you're just joining me, again, I am Dan Baird with the Rumination Project. You probably know me as Dan the Mushroom Man if you see me for mushrooms. But today we're going to be actually talking about mental health and a lot of mental health stuff. And I'm going to share out some more. I know I didn't share out too many groups. Please hit that like button if you follow through. You don't have to stay, but it helps a lot if you hit the like button. And I think we're live on all locations. You probably, if you may be watching me, Great Mushrooms, Greenly Verbal. And we'll share out to a few more groups. It's really hard to tell who's going to be up in the morning, especially on Monday. But I know a lot of you kids just started summer break. They're probably waking you up, bugging you to do something. Or if you're working, you're probably worried about what they're doing at home. And I think share a few more groups. It really helps to share. If you share, you actually get, to the bigger audience. It kind of goes out there, and the like button kind of moves you up in the algorithm, so that helps as well. But share button definitely helps get out to a bigger audience so they can see this and join me and have a nice interaction. I think that is all I can share with here. But we were going to talk about mental health today and what actually mental health is. I know a lot of people don't take it serious. They kind of see this podcast and they probably overlook it. A, because I'm not giving away something for free, and B, mental health is not easy to deal with, and a lot of people just avoid it from day to day. And I just wanted to get out there and talk about it more, even if there's nobody listening. We still do have people over at Rumble. So if you're over on the Rumble, we got 3 people watching. Hit that like button. Thanks for joining me this morning. And we will get started here once I share out in the Great River Mushrooms. Somebody shared over there. Thank you very much. It takes a little time to share these groups. A few viewers in here, at least somebody will be listening to me. But apparently I need to join some more mental health groups. I think that will really help. If you're on Facebook and you have, you're inside of a podcast, it's really good to share to groups that are related to your subject matter, And I used to be part of a lot of mental health groups, and then I left them because they were really was really sad, a lot of the stuff that happened in there and talked about, and I just couldn't do it. But now I want to help people more, and I want to talk about mental health. And these groups, if you join groups, and especially ones that are related to you, you can get a lot of new people to join your discussion, which is really what it needs. And I'm just trying to join a few groups here, mental health groups. But we still have somebody watching, and we'll just start this podcast. So again, I'm Dan Baird with the Rumination Project, and we are a cannabis-friendly podcast. And we're going to play a couple videos here about mental health. I have one video here on YouTube that's pretty interesting about mental health, and I got to find it here. We'll just start playing it, and I guess anybody can watch it later. That's the best thing about have Facebook streams. So we will play this, and I'll take myself out of here. Right, there we go. And this is going to be a video. It's basically a mental health video. What is mental health? What are mental illness? And it's a crash course. It's kind of longer. It's 13 minutes, but it has a lot of information that I would like to share. And I will definitely stop to talk at important moments.
Before we begin, we'd like to add a quick warning discussion. This video discusses mental illness, including eating disorders and PTSD. What is mental illness? According to National Alliance on Mental Illness, it's defined as the condition that affects a person's thinking, feeling, or mood for a sustained period of time that negatively impacts them. You might be wondering, is depression a mental illness? What about anxiety? Yes, they are. In fact, they're the most common types of mental illnesses. In this video, Psych2Go covers 10 of the most common types of mental illnesses. 1. Anxiety disorders. We know 18.1% doesn't sound like a lot, but that's the number of adults in the US who suffer from anxiety disorders. 40 million people suffer from symptoms of an anxiety disorder every year. Of those 40 million people, it's estimated that only 36.9% of them will get help. Anxiety disorders rarely appear alone, with depression being a common co-diagnosis. Anxiety disorders come in a few varieties: generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, SAD, and obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. So, what do all these anxiety disorders have in common? They're all characterized by nearly uncontrollable worry that messes with several aspects of daily life, such as sleep, relationships, school, and work. The good news is there are several treatment options available, which include different types of therapy and medication. 2. Personality disorders. What does it mean when someone's personality is disordered? Personality disorders refer to behavioral, emotional, and thought patterns that deviate greatly from the expectations of an individual's culture. The National Institute of Mental Health suggests that 9.1% of the population has the traits of a personality disorder. So what does this look like in real life? Could anyone who's a little different be diagnosed with a personality disorder? Well, according to the diagnostic criteria in the DSM-V, these differences must be causing the individual significant amounts of distress in the way they see themselves, others, and situations, inappropriate or exaggerated emotional responses, impulse control, and how well the individual relates to and functions around others. Personality disorders can't be cured, but thankfully they can be treated. This treatment consists of combinations of medications for the underlying mental health issues, as well as talk therapy. 3. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. If we say ADHD, what comes to mind? The stereotype of a person diagnosed with ADHD is usually a small child who's bouncing.
Yeah, this ADHD is becoming a huge problem in our society, and Honestly, I think it has a lot to do with our food. I think the dyes in our food are causing a lot of this, even in adults. There's just not a lot of research of what dyes do to adult brains, but there's plenty of what it does to a child's brain. I've seen it myself, and I think that this chemical and these dyes alone are causing a huge problem, causing ADHD-like symptoms.
Off the walls or can't finish a task. However, between 7.8 and 11% of children aged 4 to 17 are diagnosed with ADHD any given year. ADHD affects people of all ages and includes multiple symptoms, such as inability to concentrate, forgetfulness, inability to sit still, restlessness, and losing things. An individual's symptoms vary depending on their age, gender, and type of ADHD. Did you know there's actually 3 recognized types of ADHD? They're ADHD, combined type ADHD, impulsive hyperactive type, and ADHD inattentive and distractible type. Most people think meds are the only way to control ADHD, but many people diagnosed with the disorder find relief by using a combination of medications, life coaching, education, and talk therapy. 4. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Did you know that an estimated 6.8% of the US population will develop some form of post-traumatic stress disorder? That's about 19 million people in the US alone. So how does this happen? You, me, everybody will get stressed out by something in our lives. Some people will come across something so stressful that it affects them permanently. For many of them, this stress becomes trauma. A traumatic event is considered any event that should not have happened, such as a natural disaster, an assault, childhood neglect, abuse, starvation, and so on. Stress is a completely normal reaction to trauma, but what happens when the threat is gone? The stress and trauma stops on its own for most people when the mind and body understand the individual is no longer under attack. But what if the mind and body don't get the memo? Post-traumatic stress disorder refers to a prolonged fight or flight response that happens after the stressful event has stopped. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder, CPTSD, refers to the PTSD that occurs due to a series of continued traumatic events, such as childhood abuse. Think of PTSD and CPTSD as the echoes of the stress response. These echoes can happen in the form of emotional flashbacks, nightmares, extreme anxiety or panic, difficulties connecting to others, and an overwhelming sense of fear. So how does someone get help for something so overwhelming? People suffering from PTSD or CPTSD can find relief through trauma therapies, such as eye movement desensitization reprocessing, EMDR, or traditional talk therapies, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, or dialectical behavior therapy, DBT. 5. Depression. An estimated 6.7% of the US population over the age of 18, 15.7 million people, live with depression. Although the occasional low mood is a normal response to negative situations, depression entails low moods that are severe and last longer than 6 weeks. Depression manifests differently in women than men. Women tend to experience depression as feelings of sadness, worthlessness, and shame or guilt. Men tend to mistake the symptoms of depression as fatigue and being easily irritated. Common treatments for depression include cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, interpersonal therapy, IPT, psychodynamic therapy, psychoeducation groups, antidepressants, and various brain stimulation therapies. 6. Bipolar disorder. An estimated 2.8% of the US.
And if you didn't know, this is actually the, the mental illness that I struggle with. Bipolar, it's something I talk about a lot. And I think it says 2.8% of the population. I think it's more like 3.6% of the population has bipolar. I see it a lot in people myself who are not even diagnosed as well. I understand it very well, so I understand the symptoms. I see it a lot in people, and they're either misdiagnosed or they're not diagnosed at all for it. So it's not my job to go up to somebody and tell them what kind of mental illness they have. That's not my job, and a lot of people don't like that anyway. But I do see it a lot, and people, and they're usually misdiagnosed. It is actually one of the most misdiagnosed mental illnesses in America. And on average, it takes 15 to 20 years for somebody to finally get diagnosed with bipolar, because it's such a complex illness. And this will explain it more. And if you're just joining me, I'm actually sharing out a video about mental illness. It's basically a mental illness crash course. It's going to explain the top 10 common and some other things as well. So we'll keep playing it.
Population that sought mental health treatment was diagnosed with some form of bipolar disorder in 2018. This number may be low, as many individuals who suffer from any mental health disorder do not seek treatment. Bipolar disorder means a lot more than just really bad mood swings for a couple of reasons. First, people diagnosed with bipolar disorder cannot completely control these mood swings. And second, these mood swings range from manic, feeling super happy or invincible, doing crazy spontaneous things, grandiosity, and having racing or unrealistic thoughts, to extreme bouts of depression.
And with the manic, I think a really good explanation is for that. Somebody who has a lot of energy. Usually when I see somebody who's manic, they just look like they're pacing in their mind, and they have so much energy. Their mind is racing so fast that they really don't know what to do. It's hard to make decisions when you're in a manic state, but you feel good. So it's really a complex issue with dealing with manic issues, because manic can be other mental illness, but a lot of mania that happens is usually symptoms of bipolar, especially long-term manic behavior.
And maybe a little hypomania in between. Living with bipolar disorder isn't easy, but people struggling with the disorder can find a variety of medications and traditional counseling treatments to help them find more balance. 7. Eating disorders. Did you know there are almost as many people living with eating disorders as there are with bipolar disorder? It's true.
And eating disorders is on the rise. Social media has definitely increased eating disorders by far. People get on social media, especially young people, and they see these beautiful models, these beautiful men or women, and especially young women, and they start eating disorders, and those can really, really affect the brain. You're not getting the proper nutrient uptake, and so this issue is becoming a big issue in America. I know it is on the rise because of social media, people seeing things and having expectations of what your body is actually supposed to look like.
Anxiety disorder, GAD, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, SAD, and obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. So, what do all these anxiety disorders have in common? They're all characterized by nearly uncontrollable worry that messes with several aspects of daily life.
Apparently,
such as
it reset me.
people suffering from PTSD or CPTSD can find relief through trauma, and who can't stand the thought of germs. It's totally possible. Disorder. Individual who has the disorder to become super focused on their body weight and distress and disgust about their body.
Sorry about
This
that.
disgust drives the individual who has the disorder to become super focused on their body weight and shape. Leave a comment below if you want to know more about the binge, purge, restrict cycle. The eating disorders everyone knows about are anorexia nervosa and bulimia, but most people have never heard of eating disorders not otherwise specified, EDNOS, or avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, ARFID. Leave a comment below if you want to hear more about the lesser-known eating disorders. Everyone needs food, so how is someone who has such a terrible relationship with eating and body image supposed to get better? Recovery from an eating disorder is totally possible, with a combination of talk therapy, residential treatment, and medications to treat the symptoms of any underlying mental health conditions. 8. Obsessive compulsive disorder. If obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, is a type of anxiety disorder, why did it make the number 8 spot? Simple. Professionals say 2.3% of individuals will qualify for a diagnosis of OCD during the course of their lifetime. What's the first thing you think of when you think of someone who suffers from obsessive compulsive disorder? Did you imagine someone who can't stand the thought of germs? Maybe a person who turns the doorknob 27 times before they can leave the house. The common stereotype of an individual diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, is of someone obsessed with cleaning or counting to a comical degree. But that's not the whole picture.
People misuse this word a lot. Somebody cleans their house for an hour, or a couple hours. That is not an OCD. OCD is an extreme case where it becomes paralyzing. It's hard to live your life. So people need to stop using that word OCD. Just because you clean your house for 2 hours does not mean you have an OCD. It just means that you like to have a clean house. And as a human being, that's pretty simple. That the fact that we don't like germs and we like a clean environment, that's just normal human behavior. So when people say that and then they say they have OCD because their house is so anally clean, I think is a very overused term. And people are very serious about it. They're like, I have OCD, but no, OCD is very complex, and it is not something you want to see in a person. It overtakes their life in a way, causes so much anxiety because they have to do these behaviors or they'll have anxiety. And just because you have anxiety because your house is dirty doesn't mean that you have OCD as well, because obviously we all like a clean house, and that can give us anxiety when we don't have the time to do that. So just wanted to make that clear.
The reality of OCD includes a great deal of anxiety, rigid thinking, and feeling isolated from others. Individuals diagnosed with OCD suffer from recurring thoughts that they cannot control, which are referred to as obsessions. These obsessions can be things like cleaning or counting, but also include checking and double-checking, feeling as though one will be punished for being a sinner, organizing and arranging, and hoarding. Having obsessions is different from being detail-oriented, or a little type A, because individuals who suffer from obsessions experience crippling anxiety due to these thoughts they're unable to control. The compulsions are the actions, such as cleaning, hand-washing, arranging, and hoarding, that individuals use to cope with overwhelming anxiety and rigid thinking. So what is someone who lives with the reality of OCD to do? Although there's no cure for OCD, a combination of medical and talk therapy will help them manage their symptoms effectively. 9. Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. We've been hearing more and more about autism spectrum disorder, ASD, in recent years. That's because approximately 1.2% of children, 1 in 59 children, will qualify for diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder in the coming year. ASD begins in childhood, but many individuals are not diagnosed until adolescence or adulthood. ASD is characterized by significantly impaired social interactions, learning, and communication. Individuals with ASD may seem eccentric or unemotional to others, as they do not understand normal social cues. Some of these odd behaviors include seeming off in their own world, repetitive thoughts or behaviors, restricted interests, poor eye contact, and difficulty communicating with others to the point their functioning is greatly impaired. The most common treatments for ASD include special education classes, applied behavioral analysis, ABA therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, behavioral management therapy, and medication management. And 10. Schizophrenia and psychotic disorders. Did you know 3 out of 100 people will experience the symptoms of psychosis in their lifetime? Yep. This means 1% of the population suffers from a psychotic disorder. People usually have their first psychotic break between the ages of 16 and 30, which means approximately 100,000 adolescents and adults will experience their first psychotic break every year. This does not mean everyone who experiences psychosis will always have a psychotic disorder. Medical and environmental or situational factors such as extreme stress, certain prescriptions, and illicit drugs can induce temporary psychosis. For individuals with a psychotic disorder, however, the symptoms last longer than 6 months. So, what is psychosis anyway? Someone suffering from psychosis has breaks or disruptions in their reality, which manifest in behaviors such as religious delusions, audio, visual, or tactile hallucinations, feelings of paranoia or persecution, and disordered or jumbled thoughts and speech. Schizophrenia is the most common psychotic disorder, but the DSM-V recognizes a few others. Would you like to know more about the other psychotic disorders? Then tell us in the comments below. Having a psychotic disorder can feel like torture, but it doesn't have to. Many people who are diagnosed with some type of psychosis are successfully treated with a combination of specialized medications, therapy, and case management. Have you or a loved one ever dealt with any of the mental illnesses in this article? Were there any symptoms on this list that surprised you? Which mental illnesses do you want to hear more about? Tell us in the comments below. As always, any information provided here is for educational purposes only. If you need mental health counseling or treatment, please contact your insurance.
That was a great video. I think it was very informative of a lot of mental illnesses. And let me see how to remove it. There we go. Very informative of the 10 most common mental illnesses. And I think if you watch that video, you take 13 minutes of your day just to watch my podcast or this video on it, it'll be very informative and make you understand mental illnesses a little more. I think a lot of people don't want to understand mental illnesses unless they actually have one or their loved ones start to develop one later in life. But the issue is 25% of children now have some kind of mental illness or will have a mental illness. And even that many adults will. So it's something that as a society, we need to deal with as a society. We can't do this alone. And so it's important that people talk about it openly, that we as men openly talk about it. And add that back to the stream there so we know. And men openly talk about their mental health because twice as many men commit suicide as women. And I'm not saying women aren't important, but that's a serious amount. Twice as many men commit suicide as women. So we need to address these issues as a society. I don't think that just because somebody has a mental illness, we just ignore them and it's not our problem, because it is our problem. These people, these individuals who do have these mental illnesses are now carrying out violence. And if people really don't understand, they think these people are just crazy and evil, and that's not the way it was. These people who are committing these acts of violence, these mass murders, are they're mentally ill, and at one point they had normal brains. This is not violence is not genetically bred into somebody. As far as we know, it happens off of your environment, and these people environment are turning them into mental illness, and at one point they just snap, and they want to die, so they're going to take people out with them. And that's a very dark path to go down. It takes years to go down. And I think people go down that path and they don't have resources to come back out, because I've been in those dark places where I've thought about doing violence, and it's not a fun place to be. It's usually right when you're very suicidal and you have these thoughts about hurting people. And you can come back from this. It's not something that you can't come back from. Your brain is not sick. I mean, your brain is sick, but it's not something you can't recover from. So I think that we need to have resources available before these people go down a path where their morals don't overcome these thoughts they have. So, I mean, obviously I was never going to hurt anybody. They're just thoughts, and my morals would have stopped anything, but you can go down a very dark path and turn this very violent. So I think it's important that we talk about it more so we understand how to prevent these acts of violence in our society. But again, thanks for joining me. Hit that like, share button. This is, as you can see, this little graphic here. We are going to discuss different mental health related subjects every week to help understand and heal their complex mind. Please share me out. I'd like to get a larger audience who is interested in mental health. I do another podcast. It's with Great River Mushrooms. You may know me as Dan the Mushroom Man. But today I'm just Dan Baird, and we're talking about mental health related subjects. And I may have to change the time. I know it's early. We only had 1 or 2 viewers, 3 at the most. I don't know when the best time to do it, so we may change this to Monday night. We'll experiment a little with the time of it, because I don't know if anybody's up on Monday morning, especially when school's out. I know a lot of mothers are definitely probably sleeping in, and a lot of kids are too, because I think we're in like week 2 of not having school, maybe first week for other people, and maybe the third week for many. I know some schools have been out for a while. But we are cannabis friendly. We're going to medicate, and I planned on being live till 8:30. I wanted to make sure that we stayed an hour, and filled in that hour, so if people wanted to watch, that they had a lot of subject matter to listen to. And there was one other video I think that I was going to play. And it talks, what is mental health? That's again, this episode is about mental health, why we're doing this show now. And this is a really good explanation of mental health. Let me pull that up.
Every 15 minutes, someone dies from completing suicide. That's roughly 38,000 suicides each year. To put that into perspective, that's twice as many people that die from traffic fatalities in a year. So what's happening? Well, roughly 90% of all suicides are related to mental health illnesses. And global mental health is an area of public health that's a little bit behind. The World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmary. There it is right there. Mental well-being is part of the definition of health. So why is it that we are so timid around this topic? Well, it's because mental health is frequently stigmatized around the world, and some cultures don't even have words to describe mental health illnesses. And on top of that, it's a difficult topic to discuss. This is exactly what global mental health professionals work to address. They want to break.
And as a society, we avoid it. And you can see that easily on Facebook. I mean, there may be a post about somebody's drama and a post about mental health, and we all know which one's going to get a lot more attention. So I think it's very hard. People just don't want to discuss mental health. I think people just avoid it, especially even if you have a mental illness. Some people avoid it because they just don't want to deal with it. So they just escape into their own mind and not deal with it. So I think as a society, we don't discuss it enough. We don't share it enough. We don't talk about it enough, and we don't make it an important matter to discuss. It should be. I mean, mental health should literally be the number one thing that you wake up in the morning, maybe talk about it, or you just monitor your own, because without a sound mental health, our society will not improve. Our society will not get better. And a lot of us are just going to get more mentally ill.
Break the stigmas around mental health to decrease the global burden of disease due to mental and neurological disorders, and to improve overall well-being of people. But mental health and well-being go beyond neurological health. Did you know that depression is a risk factor for developing chronic diseases like hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes? Mental health is a complicated area to study. It is extremely integral for our personal well-being and health, and can be affected by so many things like the community you live in, your access to care, sexuality, whether or not you use substances like alcohol, tobacco, or other drugs, if you've moved between cities and countries, and even how and why you moved to your new home. Global mental health professionals can be researchers, scientists, physicians, field staff, and even people working in outreach. Some work with healthcare and data analysis, some work in the humanitarian setting with refugees and asylum seekers, some work in the clinical or hospital settings, and some work with organizations to change policies and to provide more resources to people. Here at NYU GPH, we work with all of the factors that impact daily life, teach you how to ask questions to assess mental health, how to conduct mental health research, how to develop themes about why one community might be more affected than another, and prepare you to work with this complex topic in many different settings.
Very informative. I like a lot of good YouTube videos that explain a lot of good details of mental health. So I will be using them a lot. I do like sharing YouTube videos because obviously I don't know everything. Excuse me. I don't know everything, so I like to find YouTube videos of people who have educational videos about mental health or different mental health related subjects where they talk about it better than I would. So I do share a lot of those videos, and I recommend that if you going on YouTube as well, there's really a lot of good subject matter on there. And I think that's helped a lot because 20 years ago, I didn't have access to all this information unless you read a book or saw a psychologist, to all this information, about mental health that we have access to nowadays. But we got one person watching the Rumination Project. Thanks for staying in here. It looks like we have a new, does it tell me a name? May have a new person watching, which is, I love having some new people in. That's why I shared out to those mental health groups, and I wanted to share out to other people as well. But I am Dan Baird again with the Rumination Project, and this is Mental Health Mondays. It's a new part of my podcast that we'll be doing regularly on Mondays. And I think maybe next Monday we'll try the evening time slot, 6 p.m. See how it goes. Then I'll experiment with some different times. But I do like using the Monday, because Mondays are kind of a day where we may need a mental health pickup. So I think it's important that we, talk about it. And it kind of rhymes, Mental Health Monday, Well, it doesn't rhyme, but same lettering, I mean. So, but thanks for joining me. Hit that like button, share me out. We're going to be again every single Monday. And here is our upcoming schedule. Today is June 12th. So today was episode 1, very first episode. And we're going to work on getting more people in here next time. You never know who is going to how many people are going to join in the morning, especially on a Monday morning. But next week, we're going to do episode 2. Is really a matter that is affecting a lot of people. A lot of people don't know what to do with it, don't understand anxiety as well. So we're going to do episode 2, and basically all about anxiety. We'll have a whole episode, and hopefully we get some people here to comment so we can have some interactions with questions and people who deal with their own issues. But we will work on that with trying to get it out to groups. And maybe we just didn't come in at a good time, 7:30 in the morning. Maybe not a lot of people on it. It's hard to tell. So we got 5 people watching over at the Rumination Project Rumble page. Thanks for joining me over there. Hit that like button over there too, and message. Love to hear some live chats over at the Rumble, but nobody really likes to chat over there. But at least somebody over there is listening. Thank you very much. And we'll play that music again. I kind of got quiet. But at least we've had one person steadily watching in here. It's better than none. Not that I would care. I would still hit the record button. And because a lot of people do come back and watch it, and I've actually seen that in the Facebook stats with the numbers usually double after a week. So people do watch it afterwards. So just because I have one person live watching doesn't mean that this information is not getting out there. And I know I was up late last night. I know a lot of people elsewhere. Maybe we were all having trouble sleeping. Now we're all still sleeping. But no matter what time I go to bed, I still usually get up 6 or 7 a.m. So just the way my brain is now, so used to getting up at that time. But as the bottom of that, is this one that says it? Yeah, what mental health needs is more sunlight, more candor, and more unashamed conversation. I really like that quote. I really think that right there explains what I'm trying to do with these videos. The unashamed conversation. I want people to see that it's pretty normal for a man to talk about mental health. And it's pretty normal for a woman as well. But podcasts, that I see are about cannabis, and we are definitely a cannabis friendly podcast. I smoke cannabis for my own mental health, and but nobody seems to talk a lot about mental health, and I think it's important that we discuss it more, especially now that podcasting has become a lot more popular, video podcasting. Thanks. I don't know if I'm saying your name right, but I think it's Hetty, if I'm pronouncing it right. I've never seen it spelled like that. But thanks for joining me. We'll be back next Monday, and you can find me on the Rumination Project, and I'm sharing over to my page. We're sharing to 6 locations, so you can find me on any of those. You got YouTube, Greenleaf Herbal, Great River Mushrooms, Rumination Project Rumble, and then I have my personal page. So we're definitely trying to get out there to more people to watch. And today we didn't really have a subject. I guess it was more or less what is mental health and why we did this podcast. Next week we'll really start to hammer the individual subjects with anxiety and fight or flight, which I think are two of the main issues that I see in people nowadays, especially people who become violent. They get stuck in a fight or flight mode, and guess what they do? They go to fight, and that's when they pick up a gun. And I will explain more on the June 26th episode of the fight or flight. That'll be very interesting because a lot of people are not familiar with it. They've heard the term, but they really don't understand the complexity of fight or flight and what happens to the human body when you actually get stuck in that state of mind for longer than a week. When it lasts for months is even worse. When it lasts for years, that's when you become schizophrenic, or even even more serious mental illness, and progressively becomes worse. That's how mental illness works. It doesn't like somebody all of a sudden decided that they were going to pick up a gun today and go do a mass shooting. They slowly went down that dark path over many years. It didn't just all of a sudden happen. It takes years, even into their childhood. There are events that happen in childhood that definitely, Head D. Okay, I did pronounce it right, I think. Head D. Okay, name is Kate Floyd. Well, nice to meet you. My name is Dan Baird, and thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it very much. And even if you didn't stay the whole episode, hit that like button, share me out. We're gonna have a weekly episode. This one we're at 46 minutes, and I'm gonna try to keep them at an hour or less. And so it'll be good. Especially the anxiety, and the next two episodes I'm pretty excited about because those are two subjects that need to be hit hard. And there's plenty of information out there to help educate us and help us understand what these things are. And did I share to a group, an anorexia group, Hetty? I don't know if that's where you came from, but I did join some mental health groups this morning, but that was on my personal page. But anorexia is definitely is probably one of the most subjects I'm most ignorant on, because I don't know anybody personally who has it. I've never met anybody, so I don't know what exactly it does. I've done a lot of research on it, but it's one of the few ones I've never actually met a person who has it. So I feel like I'm pretty ignorant. But definitely want to learn more about it. I definitely want to, bring people in here who may have it, because it is a mental illness. And it causes mental illness because, lack of nutrition can lead to a lot of things in the body that's not good. And I think that social media is really leading to a lot of eating disorders, because young people get on Facebook or Instagram and see these beautiful models or these men with 10 packs, 12 packs, and expect that's what our bodies are supposed to look like. And that is not the case. These people who do have these bodies, they either don't eat a lot or they work out so hard, their workout regimen, they have to get that to that point, It's not easy. But it's great to take care of everybody, but the fact is your body doesn't have to look like that to be a beautiful person. People need to realize that. Yeah, as a society, we need to teach our children that, it's not a good thing to be obese, but it's not a bad thing to have a few extra pounds, because that's actually how the body works. It stores food for another time, and that's why it's just pretty normal to have a little bit of weight on you. But people it becomes another thing on Instagram when that's all you see are beautiful women models and these people with perfect bodies, and then it leads to eating disorders when people see it too much, especially young children. And I'm sure teachers have seen it. That's probably one thing that teachers may see, and it's young girls hide it very well. I'm sure that a lot of them hide it from their parents too, these eating disorders, because they're ashamed, and it's hard, to overcome it. Okay, you caught me from Waylon's show. Yeah, Waylon's definitely awesome. Waylon the Indoor Farmer is definitely why I am on here. He has definitely helped me with understanding the equipment that I use, as well as give me the confidence that to actually do these lives and not worry about how many people are watching, but actually just go out and do it, overcome that fear of actually talking. Because that's one thing I deal with. I have bipolar, so there are certain times where I have fear overcomes me. I get a little scared to come on here, and then I just have to do it. And bipolar can also cause you to daydream a lot as well. So sometimes it's hard for me to put the words together in a fluid sentence, and especially in the morning without my coffee. But it's pretty normal. That's why people who have bipolar are very creative people, I think, because they do tend to daydream a lot, and when you daydream, your creative ability kind of manifests, and you kind of get, people know how that works, because people are definitely creative people. Yeah, the airbrushed photos and filters help create beautiful pictures, and that's why I saw it the other day. It was a contestant for Miss Illinois, and her picture was so airbrushed it didn't even look like her. And I'm like, well, if we're for promoting these events, these Miss Illinois events, I thought we were supposed to promote mental health, and why are we airbrushing so many of these women's photos for these events is beyond me. I'm like, just show them a natural woman's beauty. Quit airbrushing it to the point I don't even recognize them when I know them in real life. Thank you. Thanks. They definitely will. I enjoy talking about mental health, just for the fact that I've gone down the path myself since I was 12. Well, since I was 5, more or less. So that's when I developed what eventually became an adult bipolar. I just had a very lonely childhood, and they tried to medicate me when I was about 12. Because I had a lot of behavior issues. I was acting out to get attention. Because once I realized that I act badly, I could get attention that I never had. And that messed with the neurons in your head at a young age, and it made bad behaviors become something good inside the brain. And eventually led to bipolar, but I understand it now. I understand how I got it. I understand that it's still there, that it never really will go away. Because these are deep embedded neurons. I've worked on kind of trying to change them, but it's very difficult. And I use psychedelic therapy, magic mushroom therapy to treat these. And so I do have something that has the ability to change neurons, but it's taken a long time and a lot of healing to get to this point where I actually want to talk about mental health and talk about my own mental health. But that's a different episode I have. That's the Rumination Project Psychedelic Files. That's once a month episode where I talk about psychedelic experiences, mostly mushrooms, and I have guests on there, and we talk about our experiences. I usually do those episodes right after I have my own macrodose experiences. So I had one last Saturday, and we did a live for about an hour and a half, and it was very, very interesting. So the Rumination Project is the podcast name, and then we have different kind of episodes that we do. We have Mental Health Mondays, and then we have Psychedelic Files. Yeah, being your own worst critic can be a good thing though, and a bad thing, because it makes you more of a less a perfectionist. Because I criticize myself all the time. I own a mushroom company, and I actually spent 2 years just learning, researching, and until I actually had a product, because I'm such a perfectionist. I was like, I don't want to put out a half crap product. I wanted to get all the way there before, I started to sell it more. Now I'm at that point this spring where I'm selling a lot of mushrooms, and I'm excited for the opportunities of my mushroom business, my gourmet mushroom business. And if you're watching, we sell our mushrooms at Terrapin Farms, Quincy, Illinois, at North 36th. They will have a lot of our species of mushrooms all the way through November when they're open till. And hopefully they start an indoor store, because she sounded disappointed the other day when I talked to her that they closed in November. So I don't know why she doesn't just build an indoor store where she can sell her produce, and maybe that's something that she does in the future. I don't know. She's very, very busy. That Terrapin Farm sells a lot of products, and I very well think that if she stayed open through the winter, that she would be very busy as well still. Obviously, there's not every product you can sell through the winter, but she does have greenhouses and buys from farmers who grow in greenhouses as well that grow all throughout the winter. But awesome. Thanks for joining me, Hedy, over from Waylon, the indoor farmer. He's probably still sleeping. I don't know what he does now that his son doesn't have school. I haven't really talked to him in a while, or a couple days, I guess. And love the name she chose. Are you talking about my name? The name of the podcast? I guess I could explain what I called the Rumination Project, because ruminate means to talk about complex things deeply. And then the project, obviously, because I wanted to make it like a project where we force people to ruminate or talk about deep things more deeply, not just talk about what's on the surface, but talk about what's below. And so that's why the rumination name, I started it. That's why I chose the name. And eventually I have now these other episodes with Mental Health Mondays and Psychedelic Files underneath the Rumination Project, which is me, Dan Baird. I'm the Rumination Project. And we are also going to get into journalism stories. Yeah, Terrapin Farms. You spelled it right. And we're also going to get into, are you from around Quincy? From Quincy, Illinois. I didn't know if you were from the area or Illinois. But what was I saying? No, the podcast is something that, I started actually a year and a half ago, and then I didn't have an episode for a year. And then I met Waylon, and Waylon kind of pushed me to pursue. Well, actually, I went on his podcast a lot more, got more comfortable with coming on these lives, and then doing them correctly and using the StreamYard equipment. So I'm very happy that I met Waylon. He's helped me go from doing one episode a year to doing multiple episodes a month. I think I'm doing like 4 or 5. And we have everything from space launches. I love space to, these mental health episodes. So we talk a lot about different things. But we're almost at our hour, 58 minutes, and we're gonna get out of here at this 1 hour mark. So everybody, thanks for joining me. Hit that like button, share me out. Again, I'm Dan Baird with Mental Health Mondays with the Rumination Project, and we have the other thing here. So we'll be every Monday. I think the time will change. I think next week we'll tie an evening slot, and I'm having trouble talking today. An evening slot at about 7 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., somewhere around there. And we'll do an hour episode then and see if we can get some more viewers. I don't know how Monday mornings we're going to work, but I want to keep it on Monday, so it's important that we do it on some kind of Monday. So thanks for joining me. Again, Dan Baird, the Rumination Project. And until next time, I hope you all have a beautiful day. Don't forget to love yourself and give yourself some grace today. Again, Dan Baird, Mental Health Mondays. You all have a great day. We'll see you later.